I think the reason why people self-sabotage
Mhm.
is they don't really believe in themselves. They don't have as much confidence as would be helpful to them.
Pause. Take a break. Reflect on life. Your moment of greatness starts now.
Mirror Talk. In this episode, we will learn how to create a happier, healthier, and more prosperous life with the help of an accomplished entrepreneur, coach, and the author of a book titled Thriving. Welcome to the show, Rand. How are you doing?
Toby, it's great to be with you. And yes, it's a glorious day here in Northern California. So I hope everybody's having a good day.
Yes, thank you so much for tuning in all the way from North California. And I hope the wind does not blow too much and interrupt our recording. And I can see in your background it's quite sunny. It looks like a very beautiful day over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me for a civil conversation about thriving. And we'll be looking into thriving personally together in the world and moving forward, which are also the four sections of your book. But before we go into all of those deliciousness, I would like us to know more about you. I would like to know how you became the author of your own life and how you were able to design your own life.
Thank you for that question. I I think the story for me around to answer that question starts with becoming an excellent student. I really worked hard in high school, which opened all the doors to going on to college and getting a bachelor's degree in mathematics and psychology, and then on for my master's in business administration at Stanford. And excellence is one of the hallmarks of what I started with there in high school. And once I grabbed onto that, and it carries with me in everything I do, whether it's relationships, projects I do, I set a very high standard for things. Then other things began unfolding, and I'm very intentional. I've spent a lot of time over the years, and certainly the last 4 years, reacquainting myself with just who I am, not just chronologically, but how I feel and what my values are, because it really mattered to be able to write my book Thriving with a certain kind of perspective. So from
Mm.
having excellence, I moved on to really having purpose. And, having purpose is so essential, absolutely essential. I've had clients over the many years where I've done maybe the most important transaction of their lives, selling their company after they built up something of value. And then I stayed in touch with
Mm.
them, and I saw them a year or two later, and they were a shadow of their former selves. It was very
Mm.
disheartening because they were really talented, really great people, and they didn't have the range of social contacts. They didn't have challenges anymore. They really basically didn't have a reason to go forward because they handled the financial thing, and so that was sort of the end of the story for them. And that's not enough. You got to continue to have purpose all the way to the end. Um,
Yeah.
so these two things combine to continue to allow me to unfold. And then I could be the author of my own story. And now that I'm a real author, a published author, I know, I
Yeah.
know the power of looking at your story and deciding what to edit, what to delete, what's important. And when you talk to people, they want to understand you, but you need to kind of speak to them where they are.
That's very true. Yeah, and I'm so glad that you're doing that. And one thing that you mentioned right now that I would like us to go back to is like, you grew up being very excellent in everything that you do, and then you found your life purpose. Sometimes we could be like, yeah, I'm excellent in a thing, but that does not actually mean that's our life purpose, right? And how do you differentiate that? Like, let me reframe that question. How can I find my life purpose and then also be excellent in my life purpose and not just anything?
It's a very personal kind of question. How does somebody find purpose? And I
Mm.
think it has to start with just knowing yourself. but yourself, not necessarily what somebody else thinks, not what
Mm,
somebody else is recommending to you. Although recommendations and listening is can be very valuable, but to be you, and then there's a chance of you saying, here's something more than a hobby. You need to be asking questions like, what am I good at? What am I willing to commit to again and again and again? Take a look at those situations where you kind of lose track of time. That's
mm,
how your mind is so engaged with what you're doing. I think we've had that experience. All of us have had that experience where you're so uh, in the flow of what you're doing that you look at your watch. I can't believe it. I can't believe 2 hours, 3 hours has gone by. It felt like 15 minutes because you were really there. You were present and you were happy with it. You were maybe working hard, very busily, but you were fully engaged. And I think that's a
mm,
real sign of that being something purposeful for you.
mhm.
I spoke the
Yeah.
other day at a retirement home, and here are these people, probably average age is 80. And I said, it's really important. It's one of the 9 keys to aging well is to have purpose. And even
Mm,
if your purpose is to be a kind person, to listen to other people, to be interested in other people, ask them good questions without you having to say,
mm,
oh, yeah, I've been there, I've done that. No, listen to them, ask another question, follow up. They'll come around, they'll ask you when they're ready, ask you questions about you. And that's purpose. Being that kind of
mm,
purpose, being that kind of purpose person is a really, I told him that's a very legitimate, very meaningful way to be around other people.
yeah. I mean, it's very interesting that you're talking about this right now because I think I've had this conversation with someone before, and I was surprised that your life purpose could be something as it's very important but very basic as being kind.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I grew up having that understanding that your life purpose has to be something huge. I'm going to be next. I'm going to be the next Albert Einstein. I'm going to invent the next biggest thing ever. I'm going to be the one that will do the have the breakthrough in AI, for example. I always believe those things are like life purposes, and being kind is just something that you just have to be, basically.
Well, I think they're choices. I mean, the fundamental
Mm,
point in my book is that we have enormous power to make choices. These are choices
mm,
about how we spend our time, who we spend our
mm,
time with, and even our
mm,
feelings. So
mm,
I like to tell people that with these choices, you can think about what are you treasuring. I like to joke, say, what kind of pirate do you want to be? Are you going to treasure your possessions, or are you going to treasure your relationships?
mm.
And then I like to say, what kind of ziggy are you? And I say, what's a ziggy? I
Oh,
well,
what's a
I'm
Ziggy? Yeah.
referring to the great Zig Ziglar, who's a motivational speaker. He passed away about a dozen years ago. And one of his great lines, I have it in my book, along with a lot of other quotes, is uh, be the kind of person where if someone said something bad about you, no one, no one would believe it. I mean,
Mm,
think about that. No, see, these are choices. These are choices. Not that we don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that we're not interested in having possessions. But it's a matter of what we really, have the highest emphasis on in our lives.
mm. Oh yes, yes. I mean, the power of making choices. That's something you talk about also in your book. So I encourage everyone out there who has not gotten the book yet. It's available on Amazon. It's available in Barnes and Nobles, other platforms, and the information is also available in your website on your website, and it's going to be available in the show notes of this episode. So I encourage people to just click on the link already and get the book. And we'll be looking into it from section to section. The first section you talk about thriving personally, and I'd like to understand what it means to thrive
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah. Well, thriving personally is the foundational element to all the other kinds of
Mm,
thriving that I talk about. In fact, it's so foundational, it's half the book. It starts with
Mm,
building our character. And there's lots of elements to who we are, what kind of personality we have, whether we have
mm,
grit and whether we're positive or not, whether we're curious, whether we have a zest for life, whether we have self-control, whether we have
mm,
some kind of ability to have social intelligence.
mm.
And being positive is, one of the keys. Being Having grit is another one that stood me in such incredibly good stead over the years. So it starts with that, and then it goes to having a relationship with yourself. I say that the most important relationship you'll ever have with in life is with the one with yourself.
Yeah.
And you
Yes, I believe that too.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, it's pretty obvious. If you don't have a
Mm,
good relationship with yourself, it's really pretty hard to have a relationship with others or out in the world. And then it goes
yeah.
to managing ourselves. There's a lot to do where you could have all the great intentions, but if you're not really managing, you're not following through. Um, there's four things that we can control in our lives. We can control our attitude. We can control our effort. We can
Mm,
control our behavior, and we can control our actions. And so this is all part of this managing ourselves well. And then I go on, there's a
mm,
chapter on money, there's a nice chapter on all kinds of emotions, including
mm.
the whole how do you embrace death? Whether it's for yourself or
Yeah.
somebody else. And a lot of people I've come
Mm,
across over the decades are really confused about that. And when death comes around them, not to them, but around them, boy, they get thrown
mm,
off and kind
mm.
of get lost for a while. And I don't think that's necessarily. I don't think it's necessary. I think there's another way to hold that. And so then I
Yeah.
go forward, and the last chapter in that first section of the book is about having purpose and meaning in your life.
That's true. Exactly. And in the parts of the chapter where you talked about managing
Yeah.
yourself, I would like us to talk a little bit about that because I believe it's also very fundamental for you to know the kind of habits, which you talk also about the habits and the routines that we need to be able to manage ourselves better. So I don't know if you can shine some light on that, enlighten us on how to cultivate the right habits, how to create the right routines that could help us become better.
There are a number of really important elements to this. So I think a lot of people I've met are working very, very hard, and they have good goals. They're laudable goals, but they don't get enough rest. Maybe they don't sleep well
Mm,
enough. One of the things that I really recommend is people take one day off a week.
mm,
Don't go shopping. Don't plug into all the electronics. Uh, Enjoy yourself. Be with friends. Gobble up
yeah.
some yummy food. All those, listen to
Mm,
some terrific music. Do some dancing. That's all good. But this plugging into the world in terms of shopping and checking your emails and your social media, if you could put that on hold for one day a week, well, you come back so refreshed, so ready to, have good ideas and to
mm,
be, kind of have the smile on your face. So
yeah.
that's one really a big part of it. Another is spending time by yourself. We live in an extroverted world where being by yourself is not very accepted. It's kind of the poor stepchild being an introvert.
Mm,
And
mm,
I actually test out very consistently as an introvert. People say are shocked. So you are so social. I said, technically, being social is not the same as being an extrovert, or it the fundamental definition has to do with how do you recharge after you've had a whole lot
mhm,
of social interaction. An introvert needs to go by themselves, and
Mm.
I am an introvert. I have to recharge that way. And I do my best work, absolutely best work by myself when I'm creating the agenda. I'm thinking about what's really going on, coming up with plans and goals. So that's
Mm.
another really key to the whole issue of managing ourselves. Um,
Yeah. I mean, I can totally relate to being an introvert also because I mean, I'm an introvert to myself, and people always say, "How is that possible?" Because you have a podcast, and I appear to be social, and I appear to be lively when I'm out and about. But like you said, also, I'm always looking forward to going back and recharging my batteries and just being on my own sometimes. And sometimes that when it gets to a point, I'm like, I can't wait to go back home
yeah,
and be on my own and just,
right.
spend time with myself, basically. Yeah.
Solitude and actually
Mm.
thinking, ask yourself,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
how am I doing? What's going on for
Mm.
me? These are
Yeah.
really important things, and you to be think about yourself that way to uh,
Mm.
take time to reflect. It's a gift. It's a
Exactly.
huge,
Yeah.
huge gift. I know you talk about that, Toby, and I'm so happy you do. It's a really important
Mm.
ingredient to life.
Yeah.
And I mean, but this is a whole chapter, and we could go on for a long time just about this. But having good habits, this is a very popular thing that people are talking about more now than they were a few years ago. But yeah, people have good habits and they have some bad habits, and sometimes they get a little sloppy around stuff. So having good habits, knowing what your habits are, doing an inventory of these things is
Mm.
is will help shine the bright light on
Yeah.
what you're doing well,
Mm.
which habits are helping you. The fundamental thing about creating a habit is making it visible. So, for example, I have a lot of things going on for me. Very fortunately, I don't say I'm busy anymore. I say I'm delightfully scheduled. Well, so to
Mm.
do the four things I need to do when I go off and drive away, I need to put some kind of a post-it note or the kinds of things that are part of the
Mm.
meeting there at the front door. So there's no way I can leave without
Yeah.
taking all of those parts,
Mm.
writing a little note, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Mm.
I don't miss things
Mm.
because of that. Very, very helpful. And journaling would be another one um, that is such a great habit. I do journaling uh, in two important ways, and there are lots of ways to do journaling. One is I like to chronicle what's going on. So if you ask me, what trips I took, or what concerts I went to, what new friends I made, you know, in the
Mm.
year 1997, I could pull out and tell you. I do this every year. I get together with my wife the first weekend of the new year, and I
Oh, wow.
say, let's review the year.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what we did. And there are about a dozen categories, including now the best
Oh,
decisions we made during the year.
that
Oh my
sounds.
gosh, that is such a treat. So I chronicle that. That's a journal. I keep track of that
Mm.
every month. I add to it. The other journaling I do is when I'm a little confused,
Mm.
I'm emotionally distraught. Um, Often emotions are not simple. There's
Mm.
multiple layers of something going on. And so when I find myself saying, I'm just not thriving right now. What's going on for me? I journal it. I break it down into the parts. I can look at each of the parts and I can see what am I doing? What role am I playing in this confusion, in the state of
Yeah.
less than optimal? Who, who else? Who
Mm.
are the other actors in the story? And then I can say, okay, once I've looked at that, I can really have some clarity about it. At that point, I can
Mm.
start creating a plan
Oh,
to
yeah.
get myself back on track. Very helpful. And without doing that, it's a law of engineering or physics. Goes from the head down my arm to my hand, and I write it, and it's just I'm
Mm.
clear about what I
Yeah.
don't know as well. I write something, go, I'm still
Yeah.
confused.
What's your
Keep
opinion
going.
on this? Like when it comes to journaling, is it much more effective when we put pen to paper or when we do it also digitally? Is there a difference between them or are they the same?
Well, I grew up with the pen and paper. And of course, I'm word processing and emailing and posting and
Mm,
LinkedIn and all these things all the time now. But I think there is a difference. I don't want to discourage anybody who's
mm.
almost
Yeah.
exclusively digital, but I find for myself this
Yeah.
connection I was just talking about, this anatomical connection, the law of physics for the body or something.
Mm.
I think there is something to that. um, I'm left-handed, and it's my excuse for having terrible handwriting. Sometimes I'll write a really fast note, and I look at it hours later and go, I can't believe it. I'm
You can't
not a
read your
doctor. I
writing.
still can't read what I'm talking about. Oh, no,
Yeah.
terrible. So that would be an advantage
Mm,
of having a digital thing. And of course, sometimes I use Siri or
mm,
other things to just give me a reminder, which is also very helpful. If I'm busy with something and I'm with somebody else, I don't want to take a few minutes. So I just do a quick voice thing saying, remind me to
mm.
do this, or
Yeah.
here's an idea. Good, finished. So those are tools, and
Yeah.
they can be great tools. I think that the real
Mm,
answer, Toby, is just do it.
mm.
Whatever
Yeah, just
works
do
for you,
it.
just
I like
do
that.
it.
I like that Nike slogan also. Yeah. And I'm happy you made mention of your wife
That's it.
because that will give us a segue into chapter 2 where you talk
Yep.
about thriving together. You've been married to your wife for over 42 years. That's a great achievement. That's a great life achievement. So I'd
Really,
like to
yeah.
know how you keep forging a deep and enduring relationship with her.
It is one of the three
Mm,
best decisions I've made in my life. Marrying my wife,
mm,
starting my own company, because I have a lot of discipline and I know when to say no to clients. I know when to rest and say
mm,
it's time for me to have some food. It's time for me to say I'm taking care of me now. Um, and the other was moving
mm,
to where we've lived now for 40 years. Just great, three great decisions. And so, what is the core to this amazing relationship I've had? I think it's a couple of key things. One is we trust each other. Absolutely. There's no risk of me surprising her. Oh, I just spent a whole lot of money and I didn't want to tell you and I was trying to hide it. But then I realized
mm,
you'd find out anyway. I better tell you. Or setting up social engagements again without telling her. I always tell her what I'm doing and I invite her to come along. She says, no, that's your friend. You no fine, you do that. We have a number of people that we enjoy together, but she has her world and I have mine, and then we get together and say, hey,
mm.
how was your day? How's that person that you've been
Yeah.
friends with for so long, how are they doing? And then remember, you said that their mother
Mm,
was
mm,
not doing
mm,
well or something. How's that coming along? So, part of this key is having rock solid communication. So that's tricky because the two of us communicate very differently. I'm very verbal. I'm constantly thinking about the right word to use. I think words matter, and she's not quite so specific about things. So I just too patient, and I say, "Not sure I understood that. Could you explain that again?" And she's very smart, so I know there's something there. I just need to let her unpack it for me, and we have conversations. Sometimes
mm.
it's best that when we're driving and we don't have to look at each other, but we're driving forward,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we could bring up some topic and say, I got to talk about something. Last Tuesday we went off to do something, and you said such and such, and uh, uh, that upset me.
Mm,
I just want, can we talk about that? You have to really know, you have to sometimes ask, is this a good time to talk? And it might not be. It may be not a good time for me. It may not be a good time for her. But say, okay, well, how about later? this afternoon?
Mm.
Well, how about this Saturday? We can talk with. I said, that's fine. It's not something
Mm.
that's, urgent for right now, but let's
Yeah.
be
Oh,
sure to talk
communication
about
is
that.
important.
So there's a group of these really important things, and as I mentioned, we respect each other's focuses, and
Mm.
encourage each other to go about doing that. She has been phenomenal when it comes
Mm.
to the support she's given me on my book, and I really appreciate it.
Mm.
A lot of
Yeah.
life can be very lonely, so getting support, getting feedback. Oh my gosh, talk about feedback. If you don't have feedback from, somebody you're spending a lot of time with, whether it's in a social situation,
Mm.
a family situation, a boss, oh wow, you're missing out on
Mm.
these great opportunities to
Yeah.
tune it
Yes.
up
That's why we
and to
need we
do
need
better.
important or good partners beside us that could help us, to grow, to improve, to adjust. Yeah, and help us improve. And also it shows that you basically have thrived personally or are thriving personally. You've worked on yourself, you love yourself, you trust yourself, and that's why you're able to trust each other also and communicate with each other in a way that works for you.
I have had as a real mission to continue to be
Mm.
a better and better person. I'm
Yeah.
that Zig Ziglar quote. Uh, it's
Mm.
much more true today than it would have been 20 years ago, where somebody could have said something bad, and even I might have said yes, probably right.
Yeah.
So I'm working at that, and that means apologizing. Sometimes I say to my wife, what I did, it
Mm.
wasn't like I was trying to be malicious, but the way I did it was not
Mm.
very thoughtful. It was not great
Mm.
timing, and I apologize.
Mm.
That was not good, and I, you know, do we need to talk about it more? I'm happy to talk more, and if you wanna
Yeah.
just berate me for a little while
Mm.
because you're feeling that, it's okay. I have big shoulders, I'll take it. And so being respectful in that way and being willing, being strong enough, being humble enough to admit when you're wrong,
Yeah,
big
it's
time in
it's
a
very
long-term
important. It's very
relationship.
difficult or very challenging to do. But once one is able to master that, being able to admit one's wrong, I believe it helps a lot. It goes a long, long way. Yeah. Yeah, but now that we're talking about this, I would like to know, like, how can we learn to let go, to forgive, and to stop self-sabotaging when it comes to relationships too? Like, it's something to say, yeah, you are wrong, I'm wrong, but it's another thing to let go of that hurt or that burden. It's another thing to forgive. It's a different story entirely to even forget the old issue happening. And also using it to self-sabotage could be a different story or a different um, story, yeah, history on its own. So can you help us with this?
They're all related. They're all under what I
Mm.
consider to be being emotionally healthy. But they're each one of the three that you mentioned, the self-sabotaging, the forgiving, and learning to let go, all have their own
Mm.
flavor about them. And I think the genesis of each one of them is a little bit different. I think the reason why people self-sabotage
Mm.
is they don't really believe in themselves. They don't have as much confidence as would be helpful to them. An example is, hey, I'm not going to apply for that promotion, or I'm not going to sign up for a training, or I'm not going to follow up in a social situation with somebody because I don't really think they're all
Mm.
that, frankly, that interested in me. You're denying yourself a chance. It may only be a 1 in 10 chance or whatever it is of something good coming out. It's not like falling through socially, you're going to have a brand new best friend.
Mm.
Bravo that happened. But to not even give yourself a chance, there's something there that triggered. It could be a series of past experiences. And if that's the case, then again, look at that. What's holding you back? You got to know yourself. Was it, a whole pattern, or was it one or two things that now you're making bigger, making, breathing so much life into those bad things that you are now not willing to go forward. You're going to shoot yourself a foot. Now, I was in the process of getting my undergraduate degree in mathematics. I was a tutor, and we had office hours, and people would come, and one of the first thing they'd say is, "I'm not good at math." Well, so that's a belief they've already created for themselves, and it could be that they didn't do very well on some tests, or wasn't very easy to understand some mathematical principles. So I'd say, well, look, come on, let's work together. Let's see if we can solve some problems together. And they'd stop, and I'd say, oh, well, the next step, let's break it down to parts, and before long, we were solving the problems. I said, "Yeah, okay,
Mm.
let me just watch you. Here, you do this next problem." And they do it and they go, "Oh my gosh, I can do it. And maybe
Yeah.
I'm not so bad at math after all." Right? So breathing a confidence. So that there's a lot about self-sabotaging that's a
Mm.
learned, reinforced behavior. But if you look at, I think you can crush.
Yeah.
I recommend getting rid of that. The forgiving is that also a matter of taking a look at and looking honestly what was going on. So in a lot of cases, I mean, all of us, doesn't matter whether you're 20 or 80, you've had some things where somebody's
Mm.
done something that hurt your feelings, that was insulting, made embarrassed you, whole list of possibilities there. And you have to sort of say to yourself, did I play any role in that whatsoever?
Mm.
Maybe just a little bit, maybe actually more than a little bit. And so you have to say, okay, yes, I need to forgive them because it's a big rock in my backpack. I'm tired of carrying that around. So I need to forgive them, and maybe part of forgiving them is for me to apologize. And you don't have to say, "Oh, I only had a 5% role in doing this. You're the 95% bad guy." No, don't go there. Just say, "Hey, this hurt my feelings," or however you're feeling about it, and I'd like to talk about it. Um,
Mm.
just let it go, to forgive somebody else. Um, Sometimes if the person's gone, they've moved away, you don't have any way of contact, or they've passed away, then maybe you write a letter and you unburden yourself that way. Let it go, because if you're carrying around this stuff,
Mm.
it compounds. Actually, it's not good. We also need to forgive ourselves. Again, who around has never made a mistake?
Mm.
I've never met a person like that. No, no. So you need to say, okay, I have to forgive myself. It might have been intentional. It may have been unintentional. I'm going to forgive myself. I'm going to turn it into a valuable lesson so I don't do it again,
Mm.
and I become a better person. And these are all part of the forgiving, both ourselves and
Yeah.
others. It takes work. Not so simple. I can talk about it as if it's a simple thing, but I
It takes a lot
know
of
you got
time.
to reach
Yeah,
deep
book.
in there.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Some people, the forgiving thing was
Mm.
because something mom or dad did. And now it's decades later. Oh my gosh. So you got to go back to all of that. And maybe you need some help. Maybe you need somebody, a counselor, to
Yeah.
to help with that. That's okay. I encourage people, if they
Mhm.
can't do it themselves, get some help with that. The letting go is, to me, one of the most
Mm.
interesting, because it's the hardest for me. I have had a great life. I've been successful personally and professionally, and I think a lot of that is because I've been in control. I've been very well organized. You know, have goals. I communicate well with my clients and my
Mhm.
family. Here's where we are. Here's how about this? And there's three options. Let's talk about it. Let's have a
Mhm.
meeting and figure out which option's best. And so I'm really good at that. And but controlling myself is one thing, as we were talking about these four things about
Yeah.
your attitude and so on. That's one thing. But I began, surprisingly, only about 15 years ago, realizing there's a lot of stuff that I don't control. I don't know whether I was deluding myself before or ignoring it, but as I became more mature and more humble, more honest with myself, I began realizing, hey, there's a lot of things that other
Mm.
people do that I do not control. So what am I going to do about that?
Yes.
I've got to learn to let go and just hang out with me and what I can control, engage with people to the point where they say
Mhm.
thanks and I'm happy. Don't need any more help. So I like doing this exercise. It's actually, I think, a very powerful exercise. I started doing it about 15 years ago. I think to myself, what do I wish I could let go of and that I haven't been able to? So then I hold up my fist. Yeah, Toby,
Yes.
let's do that together. Hold up your fist and you're
Mm,
holding on
mm.
tightly and you see your knuckles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, they're knuckles. Okay. So I turn
Yes.
my fist over, still holding on tight.
Mm.
I cannot let go of this thing. So still some knuckles there. But then maybe because I read
Mm.
Rand's book, Thriving, I'm powerful. I can make choices. I decide I'm going to let go. So then I open my hand, I wiggle my fingers, I wiggle my thumb, and my hand rises up because it's so much lighter. I'm not
Yeah.
holding onto
You
this
feel free.
heavy thing. When I first started doing this
Mm.
15 years ago, I was doing it all the time. You saw me, and now, fortunately, as maybe
Yeah.
I've just gotten more and more humble, I'm doing it much less frequently. But when I do it, it helps me.
Mm.
It makes me smile to myself. So there you go. Yeah. Okay, let go.
Yeah. And that's how you become a happier person, right? You become healthier also in that way. Yes.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's
Yeah,
good.
it's very good. I'm going to make use of that exercise also, like holding my face and just letting go. Just
Yeah.
release control of what you cannot control and focus on what you can actually control.
Well, again, I think it doesn't mean you don't engage with other people.
Mm.
I'm much better in a small group, one on one, or a few people than I am in a large group. I'm getting much better at that. Was I'm be doing a lot more speaking in large groups. But I don't hold back and say, "Oh, I can't control whether this group is gonna like this or respond well, or, they're gonna take on my little exercise about letting
Mm.
go." I just do the best I can. I try to be approachable, I try to be open, and I try to not have big expectations.
Mm.
Boy, this is another thing that's so big, Toby. It's good to have
Yeah.
goals. It's good to make plans. But if you walk into a situation expecting something to come out of it, then you can find yourself disappointed. So I try to just be relaxed and say, hey, let's do it. We've done all the planning and now let's just see what
Yes.
happens.
Just yeah. Just have low expectations and see what happens. No,
Yeah.
earlier when you talked about the three biggest things that you've achieved or that you're happy about, you talked about getting married to your wife. You talked about starting your own business and also moving to where you're living right now for the past 40 years also. And I was like thinking about it. I was like, wow, you've had a business that is successful. Now you have a book. What are the secrets behind that? Like, how do you thrive in your work and in your career and financially? How do you do that? How do you become so successful?
One of the things that people are doing a lot of talk about is having
Mm.
balance. And often I think they're talking about work life balance, family, time, or, you know, making money.
Mhm.
And I appreciate what they're saying, and I'm glad that they're trying to get it in some way that works for them. But to me, the word balance suggests an either or. It's kind of like a teeter totter. You do more of one, you do less of the other. And I think the reality for all of us is that it's a portfolio of
Mm.
things going on. It's yeah, your work that you're doing. Hopefully, you're doing well and you feel recognized and you're earning the kind of money that makes life okay for you. That you, of course, then you have family issues and some are a little more complicated than others, and then you have
Mhm.
friends which are different than family. There's your physical life, there's your emotional life, there's your mental life. Are you a lifelong learner? Are you continuing to be curious and explore the world around us. What an amazing world and nature and so on. Um, are you spiritual? I'm not talking about religion. And in fact, in my book, there's a chapter on religion and spirituality. And I say I am much more spiritual than I am religious. Spiritual is being in awe and being humble, which for me really works well when I'm out in nature, often alone, where I can just look at the grandeur and go, this is here for so much longer than I am, or and the memory of me will be long gone. But this rock, this plant, this animal, the whole thing, and I just it makes me happy, and it settles me down, and it gives me a kind of serenity. And that it's an honor. I am in awe, and I'm also humble because I'm such a little tiny little insignificant thing. It's good for me. So there's a whole portfolio, as I say, of these things that need to be looked at. And again, you can't just say, oh yeah, yeah. You gotta, I think, be intentional about it. And you gotta say to yourself, let me check myself out. How am I doing? Let me give myself a grade on a scale of 1 to 10. Am I doing a 9 or a 10? Or am I kind of at a 5 or 6, or am I worse? Worse. And I need to work on it. Where am I with my friendships?
Yeah.
What kind of person am I? What work do I need to do? So these things are all part and parcel of how I become who I am, and how I can navigate so many different things at the same time, basically. So I can intentionally set up that I ran my company. I've run it for over 3 decades. But I also decided when I originally set it up, I had a set of principles. And the principles included that I would live and work in the same town so I didn't have the big commute. Now, I know that's not possible for everybody, but I'm just saying this is what happened for me. And I was very clear that that was something that would benefit me. That allowed me to then be involved with my kids' schools, or be the scoutmaster, or be the little league coach, to participate, to invest back into this lovely town that we live in and have enjoyed for all these many years. So it's a combination of things. I believe we have a duty to take care of Mother Nature, and we can easily abuse her. But so I'm there rolling up my sleeves. We are out, my wife and I, at the local marsh. And the fancy term for it, which I use, is where the environmental stewards, and she says, get over yourself. We pick up weeds. We take out the non-native plants. But you're not good for the marsh. I say, you're right. You're right. That's what we do. So, it's having a commitment of service. I am the happiest person when I'm invisible. It's not about me. It's about getting on with the relationship. It's about making the project unfold in a good way. And when I'm in that way and thinking about it, I'm there as an agent, but I'm not there focusing on my little aches and pains and woes. Very, very nice place, a very happy place for me. Time goes by very fast that way too.
Yeah, you feel connected to yourself also, and connected to nature, connected to the world. Yeah. I, I like one thing that you mentioned about, humility. You talked about, being that, you use in my own words, being that small particle in the whole universe. The universe is so vast, so broad, so big, so wide, and we are just that tiny dots in the whole of it. And that gives us a perspective of, we'll be here for a short while, and everything that God has created and placed on this planet will outlive us, or has even been there millions of ages before we came to existence also. And that gives us that makes us humble. It places us in a place to be humble and to reconsider things in a way. Yeah. I mean, reading your book, Thriving, helps us to become happier, helps us become healthier because we are able to thrive personally, which is the fundamental thing, to love ourselves more, to manage ourselves more, to cultivate or create those habits, that frame of mind that we need to become successful. And then you take it out a step further to thriving in our relationships with our family, with our friends, and dealing with all of the ups and downs that come with relating with other people also. And then you then move it to engaging, being actively engaged in the world, like you said, from an example of picking up the weeds, clearing the environment, contributing positively to the community. And then you look for other ways that you can also be, thrive, regardless of your age, regardless of your stage in life. I mean, your book just packs it all up, and I'm happy that we've been able to cover a lot of it. Maybe the first two sections intensively in this conversation. And I encourage anyone out there who has listened so far to just click on the link in the show notes of this episode and get the book also. That will really help you a lot. I don't know if you have any closing remarks, any words you would like to share before we. Yes, exactly. That's the cover of the book. In case you're watching the video, thriving. Yeah. What will be your closing remark?
Well, I just want to inspire and encourage people to take a look at themselves, create a pathway to a fantastic life. My book, as I mentioned, has a lot of quotes, but the only one for me is the very last one in the book. And it says, "Could this coming year be the best year of your life thus far?" And then I say, and what would it take to make it so? So these are this power we have to get on with this, to maybe reach our own potential, to be healthy, to be happy, to be fulfilled and prosperous, and defining success your way, not just financially, but in all these other really important ways. Uh, this is a possibility.
Oh, that's good. I love that. Will this coming year be the best year of your life, and what do you have to do to become that, to achieve that? I love that so much. Thank you so much, Rand. It has been so wonderful speaking with you and learning how we could thrive in every area of our lives. It was wonderful. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation.
Toby, it's been a pleasure being with you.
Thank you. Wow, you made it to the very end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'm grateful for your time, your love, and your contributions. Subscribe, like, review, and share this podcast. God bless you. Bye. Bye.